The $2 million retirement. Is it fine dining? Is it driving Lamborghinis on the Amalfi Coast? Designer clothing, mansions? It's none of that. The $2 million retirement, it is not common in the American experience, but it's not all that uncommon. And I do have clients and client relationships where people have approximately $2 million in retirement savings. I'm going to talk more about the experience and what it is like to live with $2 million in retirement. Stay with me. $2 million is a huge number. It's often the culmination of a lifetime of work, whether it's a work in a well-paying 9-to-5 job or maybe an entrepreneur who had some successes along the way. But basically, if you have $2 million, the average person who reaches that number is in their late 50s or early 60s. It's very rare that I see someone who is in their 20s or 30s. It does happen. It's usually a function of company stock equity or some other fortuitous change in events in their lives to put $2 million in their hand. But we're going to talk about $2 million in terms of retirement and why that number is so important. And a lot of people, when I tell them, especially for early retirement, bare minimum, you need about 2 million, they want to fight me. They are very angry about that number. How can it be so high? How can you need 2 million? You're only saying that because you're in San Francisco or New York or far side of the moon or wherever I am. But the reality is 2 million. Okay. What does $2 million retirement look like? It looks like a home that's paid off. And it's not a mansion that's paid off. It's a house that's paid off. It's a car that's paid off. It's a few trips, maybe 2 or 3 trips where they want to go in the world during the year. It's being able to socialize and dine out with friends. It's being able to see a doctor or a dentist when you need to acquire those services, and it's being able to spend time with friends and family in the golden years. There's nothing opulent about it. It's not private jets and Lamborghinis. It really is what is very interesting, which was a middle class lifestyle probably 40 years ago. And oftentimes I joke with friends who are kind of in the same age cohort as myself, and I've known these people for many, many years, sometimes going back as far as elementary or junior high school. And it feels like we're running a marathon only to stay in place. We grew up with secure health care. We grew up with our parents owning a home. We grew up with 1 or 2, nice vacations every year and a car that was paid for. And I feel like we are working overtime to achieve that same standard of living in retirement. It has to do with a lot of factors, a lot of changes that have happened in the American economy since the late 70s, early 80s. But basically, a $2 million retirement is what middle class lifestyle was maybe 50 years ago, especially for people in my cohort who are in their 40s and probably will retire in the next 20 years. So what does the breakdown of numbers look like for $2 million in retirement? Stay with me. Now, in terms of early retirement, and that's retirement from age 55 to 62, I said the number is really actually north of 2 million. The exact number you have to work out with your financial advisor, but it's 2 million and up for an early retirement. And people laugh at me and criticize me, but there is, if you really press on financial advisors, a lot of financial advisors will tell you the truth. And remember, I'm talking about future retirement, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Zers, not the people who are currently in retire, baby boomers, silent generation. They just got a different deal than we're going to get. And part of my mission in doing these YouTube videos is put out some real talk and real numbers to Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z to say, look, these numbers are mighty big. You really have to start now if you want to hit these numbers. So I'm going to show you what an ideal early retirement would look like from a financial advisor's perspective. Now, I want to talk you through this scenario because there are some things that are very different from the $750,000 at retirement scenario. First things, I gave this person a whole heck of a lot more money. Instead of $750,000, this person has 2.5 million. It's a considerable difference between 750 and 2.5 million. I'm gonna just put the pedal to the metal here, and I'm gonna say something really goes sideways in American society, and inflation takes off and never quite comes down. Instead of doing inflation at 3%, I'm gonna do inflation at 5%. Now, a word about that. If we have prolonged sustained inflation at 5%, nobody's retiring. Nobody's retiring. 5% inflation basically eliminates the retirement dream across probably 90% of Americans. And you're going to see it in the numbers that I'm going to show you, but it basically makes retirement impossible. So at 5% sustained inflation for a very long period of time, everybody pretty much is working until they die. I also, if this person has 2.5 million across various investment accounts, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they have a pretty decent Social Security. They're a high income earner or have some other resource that put them in the top echelon of Social Security earnings. So I gave this person $44,000 a year in Social Security. Now, also, with the $750,000 person, we did a 60-40 portfolio split. For this person, if they have 2.5 million, they likely took a more aggressive stance in the market. So I'm doing an 80-20 portfolio split here, which means higher returns over a longer period of time. A few caveats with this. I use market data going back to 2003. Market data going back to 2003 may not be indicative of what happens in the next 20 to 25 years in the market. A lot of what we have seen occurring in the stock market and with equity returns is pretty unprecedented. It is due to a lot of legislation that occurred post 2003 to make the type of returns that we're seeing possible. If there are legislative changes that impact the investment market or changes to the tax structure, these returns just may no longer be a possibility. But since we only have really historical data to look at, I'm going to dive into that historical data. Thanks to ChatGPT for providing the average 80-20 portfolio returns based on the S&P 500 over the past, 20 years, going back to 2003. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So first things first, I'm going to reveal this first line here. Ideally, this person wouldn't be retiring at 55. Like I said, unless you have a pension, inheritance, next week's Powerball numbers, or some very extenuating set of circumstances, retirement at 55 can be very young. And I do know some people who have retired at age 55, but they were often state workers with a pension. And oftentimes they took a year or two off and then they started kind of an encore career, or some of them actually went back to working in state agencies because they were allowed to come back as consultants and they were just paid as consultants. So retirement 55, I'm going to leave that off the table. What I think is going to start happening in the future, Gen X, millennials, Gen Zers, is that if you're lucky, by the time you're in your mid to late 50s, you'll be able to take a step back from your current corporate career and design a career that makes more sense for you. But basically, you're going to keep working in some capacity and contributing to society. I basically moved this person's retirement from age 55 to age 62. Now, another logical question, and this is a whole other video, what does it take to get 2.5 million by your early 60s in a retirement account? It is doable. You almost certainly have to be a high income earner and you have to be very, very, very dedicated to the goal. Do you have to start in your 20s? Not necessarily, but you do have to start by probably your mid 30s at absolute latest. And you have to have laser focus and laser dedication to this goal. Can most Americans achieve a $2.5 million, retirement nest egg? No, no. Realistically, this is probably the top 5% of people. And those are the people who have the income, the time, the discipline, and the focus to be able to achieve this number, or they have a fortuitous set of circumstances. I've seen people achieve this number. They were doing pretty well and moving along. They received an inheritance. They sold a business. They sold a home that really buoyed their numbers and pushed them into the $2.5 million category. I also want to reiterate this person is single. It's just easier for me to do numbers for a single person. That makes this even harder to do this as a single person. You can do it. Most Americans won't do it. I fully realize this is probably the top 5% of retirees. So once again, I pushed this person's retirement from age 55 to age 62. And I moved their annual withdrawal from, I believe, $56,000 a year to $150,000 a year. Now, that's a pretty generous amount of money. Does that correlate to today's expenditures in terms of cost of living. Pretty much so. Pretty much so. If you have a single person making $150,000 in most areas of the country, you'll be okay. Could most people live on $150,000 and sustain kind of the middle class dream here in San Francisco, meaning owning a home, having a car, doing vacations, having health insurance, having vision, dental, dining out, doing all that? No, not here in San Francisco. And I was looking at this number and I was like, well, dang, even with $150,000 a year, that's over $10,000 a month. If I were in this situation, I would have to move out of San Francisco. How much does it take to retire comfortably in San Francisco? Anywhere from 5 to 10 million. $150,000, I think we can do that. We can find a comfortable place where this person can live the retirement that they want to live here in the United States. So they would have the option of staying in the United States, but they probably would not be able to stay here in San Francisco or in LA or in Manhattan. Okay. So we're going to start this person off. Let's say this person is 62. The returns map to the year 2003. An 80-20 portfolio returned about 24%, which is pretty darn good. This person is going to withdraw $150,000 at the end, starting with a $2.5 million account balance. They'll have just south of $3 million. So we look at the next year, this person's age 63, the market returned about 9.5%. I've inflated this forward, 156,750. Their retirement account balance is north of 3 million. So let's go forward with this. And let me show you why, in my opinion, as a financial advisor, this really works. Okay. So the numbers get pretty darn big pretty quickly. The next year at age 64, this person's going to need about 165,000. At age 65, they're going to need about 170,000. What's buoying this along is strong market performance. Between 2003 and 2007, the stock market had some pretty decent years. And the number of 2.5 million is so large, and the withdrawal rate is within the purview of sustainable for this portfolio, that when this person takes their annual draw out, the portfolio just kind of rebounds and bounces back. Well, 2008 comes along. Here we have 2008. Okay, I'm sure everyone watching this remembers what happened in 2008. It was the Great Recession. This portfolio lost almost 30% over the year. Okay, so this portfolio went to just north of 3 million to just north of 2.1 million, but this person still needs $186,000 to survive. So this person's probably nervous after a 2008 market event. I know I would be nervous, but the good thing is that the stock market came back in 2009 with a 22% rate of return. So that puts this portfolio back at 2.5 million with almost a $200,000 draw on this. Now, something's curious is happening at age 67. So at age 67, probably for this person at age 70, this person would start or would be eligible to start drawing their Social Security. Okay. I don't give a fig about Social Security with 2.5 million. I mean, for the client, I don't give a fig about Social Security. This person can survive independent of the collapse of Social Security. And that makes me feel very good. Now, I care for a greater American society about the viability of Social Security. Don't get me wrong about that. But it's a very good sign if you're looking at someone's retirement savings and you're saying, you know what, even if Social Security went belly up, I think you're going to be fine. That's when you know you have a bulletproof retirement, and this is a bulletproof retirement. So I would say to this person, look, especially if there isn't a concern for the next generation. Let's say this person doesn't have any kids, or they want the last check to bounce and don't really have any plans of inheritance. You don't want this person leaving this earth with $8 million that's going to go to charities. This person very well could end up in the situation if they're not taking enough money out of their portfolio and spending it down. If the person has inheritance issues or inheritance needs for the next generation, we need to build that into this. But let's say this person is child free and has not a worry about what's going to happen with this after they die, and they're going to leave it to some distant relatives and some charities. Okay, I would say, look, you're getting $44,000 a year from Social Security. keep taking your current draw rate from your portfolio. You can just upgrade your lifestyle. So, take those extra trips every year. What at this age, they're pretty young. They may be taking extra trips per year, but a lot of people choose who are in this situation. A lot of people choose to look at their traditional IRA or their traditional 401k and do something called qualified charitable distributions. So, and this really used to come into play at 70, now it's coming into play at like 73. But basically, with Social Security, they really don't need the money from their traditional accounts. And instead of spending that money, they use it to give away to charities. I have some clients who are very charitably inclined. A lot of people in this situation, 2.5 million, they do a lot of charitable giving and they do a lot of board work. So, this person may be fully retired, but may be active in the community and sitting on several boards for several charities, or may be very passionate about certain charities in the community. And we can look at potentially charitable giving while they're alive to reduce the tax burden of this, because depending on how the money in the investment accounts are distributed, there's going to be a pretty heavy tax burden if a lot of this money is in a traditional account. But also to see the impact of their charitable giving while they are alive. So this person pretty much is going to continue taking out money. But let's say this person decides to take out a little bit less money because they're getting the money Social Security around 74. If you notice, the balance of what they have in total is still growing. It's still growing. They're not taking out enough money, and market returns are so high that they are pretty much not diminishing the amount of money. And even at some point in their 80s, they have more money than when they started. And this is a beautiful situation, right? Because this person really is insulated from a lot of these impacts and the shocks of economic society, because the cost of living is getting very, very, very expensive. If you have 5% inflation sustained for 20 years, by the time you're 90, that $150,000 is about $420,000. Like, who can absorb that? That is insane. So by the time this person, and this person's going to live a long time, I kind of tapped him out at 97, but if this person dies at 97, they still have 1.8 million that can go to charity. Or if they have a long-term care event anywhere along the way, they will be fine. If they have a major medical event during this period of time, they will be fine. If they need to replace their car or replace the roof on their home, or something goes sideways in life, they can handle the impact of it. At 2.5 million, you basically, and I stated this before, but I think this deserves restating because it's an important point. You're not living a baller lifestyle. You're not going to have a private jet. You're not going to have a yacht. You're not going to be jetting all over the world and rubbing elbows with billionaires and probably by this time trillionaires. But God willing, even with 5% inflation, you'll be able to pay your bills. You'll be able to put a roof over your head. You'll be able to cover whatever medical situations come up. You'll be able to take nice vacations. You'll be able to dine out. If you want to wear nice clothes, you can wear nice clothes. You basically are able to replicate a middle class lifestyle from 40, 50 years ago. And I will say it and say it again. Sometimes I feel like I'm just running in place. I'm just trying through all my hard work, investing in efforts to replicate the lifestyle I had growing up when I had two working parents who owned their own home, who, on a salary of a teacher and a truck driver, were able to provide for two kids, own a home, take vacations, have health care, have vision, have dental, have all the things that we take for granted. And with 2.5 million projected forward 20 years, you can have that too. So I'm saying a lot here, and I'm going to switch back to my camera, but I'm showing my work here. These numbers are pretty impressive. Will most Americans have 2.5 million in retirement? No, this is totally unrealistic. Most people have several magnitudes of order less than this, but with the proper education, the proper focus, the proper time, we can give people something to aspire to. Even if instead of 2.5 million, if you have 1.5 million, we can make that work. But with 2.5 million,
Social Security could collapse, Medicare could go out the window, you can experience a long-term care issue and you will be fine.
I'm stating something very important here and showing you these retirement numbers that needs to be restated. I'm essentially working overtime to try to replicate the same standard of living I enjoyed as a child almost 50 years ago. When and where I grew up, every family owned a home. Every family had two cars in the driveway. Every family had an opportunity to educate their kids to the best of their ability. 50 years forward, and it's considered a flex to own a home. If you have two cars, you must be bringing in some serious money. If you have a job that provides health care, vision, and dental, well, that's something special. To educate your kids almost requires you to move heaven and earth. Why should an American have to work 50 years and acquire millions of dollars to basically replicate the same standard of living that we had 50 years prior? That's saying something big and important about our society. So these numbers are pretty intimidating. If you want these numbers to change, I think it's going to have to be self effort, of course, that helps to be able to save for retirement, but it's also a societal effort. What's important to us as Americans? We need to save Social Security. It's the backbone of retirement savings for tens of millions of Americans. We need to invest in public education. Having an education in a public school system allowed me to get to the position where I am today so that I can do this work, so that I can pay these taxes to the state of California, to the federal government, to keep our society going. We need to have access to health insurance, vision, and dental to have a basic functioning society. So there's a broader statement in this number of north of 2 million for retirement. Basically, you're doing what you need to do to replicate a lifestyle that was considered middle class only 50 years ago. So there you have it. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you like and tell me what you don't like. If you found this information useful, please like, share, and please subscribe. Thank you.